All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for participating in this important conference. With me today are four men who are very close to me personally. They're very active in my ministry, and all of them are acquainted with the messages that I gave this morning in my keynote address. And I'm going to start with Reverend Webster because this afternoon's topic is men and money. And Reverend Webster has been the pastor that has done the most work with my D-Free curriculum and content and strategy than any other pastor in America. He's the pastor of the Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church in Indianapolis, Indiana. He has recruited and trained over 25 churches to be involved in D-Free in his city, in addition to his, and he has the most innovative ministry for men in the country, being used by Black churches in Texas, in Oklahoma, Louisiana, and New Jersey. It's called the Men's Boot Camp. I'll let him describe it, but Dr. Webster, as we talk about men and money, you know, I couldn't have a conversation about men and money without bringing you into it. Talk about the kinds of things you tell me related to why it's important to talk to Black men about money.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Soaries, for having me on. Greatly appreciated of the movement of Deep Free. It has blessed my life immensely, and it has empowered my church and men around the country. Our boot camp strategy has certainly been heard on 1,500 radio stations to several million people as it relates to engaging and equipping and meeting the needs of men from all walks of life. I think one of the reasons why I think that the conversation around men and money is so important because you look at it from a biblical perspective, men are the priests, prophets, and providers of their family. And it is our responsibility to lead our family psychologically, emotionally, and financially. And, you know, most statistics say that most families in America, period, they don't even have $500 in the bank. A large percentage of them live from paycheck to paycheck. And if you look at the responsibility of the family, whereby I know moms help keep the family together, but that role ought to fall on the father from a biblical and a theological perspective. And so I think as it relates to men and money, one of the main things that men have to do is to become intentional about their money. I think the fallacy is that we go to work, but we turn everything over to the wife. And when you look at it from a biblical perspective, the onus is on us to lead our families. And so I encourage the men at Emmanuel. We've had, I know probably at least 100 men or so go through our D-Free presentation at Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church. But I think the man ought to be the one who leaves the legacy for his family. And I think if he's going to be the one who leaves a legacy for his family, he has to be intentional about money management, savings, and engaging his children.
So Reverend Hyde, Reverend Trevor Hyde, everybody, is at the Berean Baptist Church in Brooklyn. He is not only the D-Free leader at his church, but he also works along with our national team. He does speaking for us, training for us. But Dr. Hyde, when I came by Berean one night to visit one of your D-Free classes, what I noticed was that you were experiencing what we experienced nationally, and that is almost everybody in the room was a woman. And our data indicates that 75% of our readers, our participants are women. And so what do you think we can do if Dr. Webster is right and men have the primary responsibility, but we find women gravitating to the message more? What kinds of things do you think we can do to get more men involved in the D-Free movement?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. And to echo some of Dr. Webster's words, one of the things that I realized, Dr. Soaries, was when you approach men with the whole concept of being D-Free, having money management skills, one of the things that I realized is that they struggled with this idea of them being able to do it because they associate money and identity. And one of the things that I tried to talk to them about is helping them to understand that you can start from wherever you are, in spite of whatever it looks like, in spite of how much money you have or don't have. You can start from wherever you are and build from there, helping them to understand that their identity is not ruined because their money picture is not perfect. And once I was able to do that, work through the identity issues that come along with men and money and that conversation, they would more readily engage me. And to echo some more of Dr. Webster's words, talking to them about legacy was really, really important, helping them to understand that getting good control over your money not only helps you now, but it helps your children and your family for the future. And when you put it in those terms, they were softened up somewhat and became more interested in what I needed to say about D-Free and money management for men.
So fellas, thank you. James G is someone that I've known since he was a teenager. He generally describes me as having been his youth pastor when he was in high school. He is now the chief of staff for the first and only African-American woman that New Jersey has sent to the United States Congress, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman. I've been friends with his family for as long as I've known them now, probably 40 years. I performed his wedding, and he admires me so much that he had twins like I did. James, let me ask you about your work in government and among Black leaders around the country. What do you think it's going to take to really get our leadership to focus on economic issues to ensure that when we reform the police and when we gain all of our political victories, that we still have an eye on having the capacity economically to do the things that we say we want?
I think that first, thanks for having me. I think that this is very important. Our collective success is tied to our individual success. Those communities that have demonstrated an ability to not just earn a lot, but to save what they earn and to place their money strategically are treated differently in our political process. And they're in a position so that they're able to participate in the political process. There's no doubt that the African-American community plays a significant part in every election that I'm involved in for our vote. But there's another level that happens that is very important, and that's called that what makes a candidate, gets a candidate's attention and sustains a candidate's attention. And a lot of that has to do with contributions and status within the community. And so when I hear the pastors talk about legacy building, that legacy is not only important for your individual families, but that legacy will translate for your families and your community and the broader Black community. There's very few times when I am called upon about a policy issue related to advancing the economics of African Americans. Ironically though, one of the issues that I've been working on for the last 7 months have been with about 3 or 4 billionaires who happen to be African American, who are doing very successful work in the financial field, but they're having a very difficult time breaking into investing some of the money that Black people actually make possible for that money to be there. When I'm mentioning or thinking about the money that comes from pension funds and the money that comes from college endowments, those are areas where we have some Black folk who have been very successful, who are finding it very, very difficult to convince institutions and banks to allow them to manage the money that regular working class Black people put into these pension funds. And so I don't think that we know enough of us know enough about how important we are to the overall community impact of what we do. And if we know that every month when we get our check, somebody takes a portion of our check and invests that our pension, and we pray that that's there when we get out. But there's also some power in who actually manages that money before you retire. And so I hope that from your work to try to get people to get organized individually, that organization will translate collectively to accrue political power to a community that already has some political power, but has done very little by way of financial.
Yeah, James, thank you for that. Martin Soaries is my youngest son, and he is working with me on a number of things, not the least of which is how to educate his generation and kind of get a word in edgewise in between beats to teach them the kind of things, James, that you just described and the rest of us care about. And so, Martin, talk about some of the creative ways you think we're going to need to engage your generation, some of the strategies we'll have to use to make sure we don't wait until we're 50, 60 years old to start thinking financially.
Well, I think information is definitely big for this generation. I think the young people consume so much that if you can get them to understand the power of what they're consuming and what they're reading and what they're watching, that it can really turn into and translate into the youth becoming a little more conscious and aware of what's going on and what they can do to contribute to their societies, to use their gifts to spread positivity or to protest in some instances, whatever it is, to make sure that what they're doing is geared towards some kind of ultimate goal or strategy. And I think the more we can give them videos and graphics and all the kinds of things that they engage with anyway, the cool stuff that they love, because we know the youth are all about what's cool. So in a way, you have to make things cool, but then you also have to get them to really just appreciate, especially with what's going on right now, the fact that, history does kind of repeat itself. Things do kind of happen in a cycle in a negative way, as we're kind of seeing right now, when you don't have people, young people, older people coming together to really have that spirit of strategy. So I think for them, it's really just about presenting them all the visual and good stuff with good music, with good intent, with the youth always know when you're not being genuine. If you hop on a camera and you just speak and all stiff and just trying to get them to do something, they're not going to relate with you. But if you present them something that has a good vibe to it, is naturally genuine, and they know that you're coming from a place that you're trying to just inform them so they can be a better version of themselves, then that's when you can really tap in with the youth and give them something that they can use to, again, be themselves and contribute to the betterment of what's going on.
Well, the fact is, this is not really dramatic or sexy conversation, but it's critical to our survival. I'm impressed that on a day like today, so many Black men would gather knowing that we're going to talk about serious things, because we are sometimes so focused on silly, there's no room for serious. So thank you to the Kaya organization. Thank you to my friends and my son that joined me for this brief conversation. And I think the theme is that Black men have to do it, Black men can do it, and it's up to us as leaders to figure out ways to never give up and to insist that we develop an economic strategy to undergird all of our social and our political goals. So thank you very much. Thank you, brothers, for joining me. God bless you and have a great conference.